Hello, I'm Jonathan Bowman-Perks and welcome back to my favourite time of the week. And as part of the Inspiring Leadership series, I am really delighted to have Major General Alastair Dickinson. And Alistair and I served back in a time when I did look like that, a little bit younger. And you were the Deputy Chief of Staff and I was the Chief of Staff of 15 Brigade. Now it sounds like that was a one way around, but actually Alistair was the one who was the smarter, brighter one, as you can tell, because he went on to have a very successful career, become a Major General, and also then go on into business and do very well in the last 3 years. So Alistair, great to have you on the series. We were talking about inspiring leaders. Who would be the one that you'd pick, and what qualities did you admire in him that you think are worth people taking on some of the best of that?
For me, it's always been, whenever I've asked that question, it's always been Slim. It sounds a bit trite to
and tell people who weren't in the military who Slim was.
Field Marshal Slim commanded out in the Far East during the Second World War, defeat into victory. He was an individual that took an army that was in tatters, turned it around, and mainly due to behaviours, mainly due to will, morale, those sorts of issues, and turned that army into a highly successful organisation. And so I compare him with our two great generals, Slim or Montgomery, and I'm a Slim man, and I think you're either one or the other. Slim was very much about people, and that's why he's my sort of I wouldn't say hero, but he's the one I try and base what I do on.
And what was Monty like, and that you try not to be like?
Well, I might be maybe over exaggerating, but one gets the impression Monty was an individual that stood in front of the troops and said, "This is how it's going to be. You believe in me, and it'll all work." Slim was an individual that I believe was, "This is how it's going to be because I believe in you, and you're going to make this work." And it was about the troops. It wasn't about have faith in me. It was I have faith in you, and I think it's not even a nuance. That's a really key difference between how one can lead.
Yeah, no, and people won't know, but you had a phenomenal career, and I was particularly admire the fact that you were the officer commanding 5'9" Royal Engineer Commando. So you had to do some pretty tough stuff. And also you worked in a part of the army which was called resources and programs, and you went back there a number of times, and that was always almost the cutting edge of some of the more challenging and intellectual roles, but they needed people who were down to earth and understood how the army worked. Also you commanded a brigade, an engineer brigade, and then as a Major General you're looking after all the basing and infrastructure. So some great roles, and now you've come into business and you're looking at big infrastructure projects again in business, which is particularly challenging, but we need people who can do big programs. As well as all the successes, we all make lots of mistakes, and there's a competition, but I know I've made way more than you have.
Not true.
So if you look back at something as a leader, because people have said you're an inspiring leader, so this isn't you saying you're an inspiring leader, I know you are, and others have said so, which is always makes it easy, you don't have to brag. In the mistakes that you've made, would you pick one out, and what was the lesson that you learned which has shaped how you responded to that and got over that problem? Give us a story.
I mean, the list is huge, but I'll pick one that springs to mind, and is actually quite recent. I always tried to treat everyone the same, whether I was briefing ministers or royalty, or indeed talking to someone who was on the guard. And it's a skill to do that, and you had it as well, just in case anyone else doesn't know. You absolutely had that. It is a skill and you need to work at it. There are some lessons like you've got to keep in the back of your mind, which are never underestimate an off-the-cuff quip that you in your sort of bubble as you're wandering around, you make a wee joke to someone who you don't meet very often. In fact, if it's at regimental or brigade level, it's probably the only time you'll meet them, and you make a little joke which sort of takes the mickey, which is quite humorous in your bubble, but that's the only time that individual's met someone who he perceives or she perceives to be a serious individual in their lives, and it can have profound effects. And I've tried to do that throughout, and I got that wrong only a matter of months ago. And a good friend of mine actually said, "Alistair, do you know that particular individual that you said such and such to was in tears. I was
Right.
gutted, utterly mortified. And of course, the first thing I did was next morning rush straight back in, ask could I have a word off to one side, and plead forgiveness and I'm really sorry, etc. And I now have a far better relationship with that individual as a result of that happening, but it shouldn't happen in the first place.
Yeah.
So that, it's a constant thought you've got to have in the back of your mind as you're wandering around, because as leaders you have to be visible. Just be cognizant of the impact that words, which to you are routine, to others have significant meaning.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of Annette Barnes, who was the CEO of Lloyd's Private Bank. She was on the series recently, and she talked about the time at which she went to one of the execs with some papers when she was quite junior, and was a bit in fear and trepidation, went in and said, look, I have to put these papers over, there's no one on the front desk, who should I give them to? She went, put it over there. And that was like, and she felt so small, and she said, I will never do that. She then became one of the execs, and she's made a point of never doing it. And indeed in the feedback from her video, lots of people said, you really were inspiring, you cared about people.
Yeah.
And you definitely did. I saw that. I think we were together about 2 years, weren't we?
That's right.
In York. And you always had such a sense of fun. But also, I always admired you because you kept me on my edge as far as keeping fit. And you always, fitness has always been a big part. And you and Alice have two lovely sons. And one of your sons, I think, is a triathlon expert.
He's not bad.
A champion, isn't he?
He's not bad. He's at the moment he's ranked 48th in the world.
Wow.
So he's not bad.
And how old is he now?
22.
Wow.
I hope he's 22. He might be 23. So we'll be in trouble with Alice.
That's great. And what are you doing to keep fit?
So I have knee issues from the joys of all of the various things that one does in our careers. So I essentially have to have new knees. So I won't have new knees until as late as possible. Try and let technology get better, etc.
Yeah.
So I cycle and I swim.
Yes.
And clearly I can't keep up with my boys.
Yeah.
But whenever I'm travelling around, I ask, can I be put in somewhere that's at least got a swimming pool or a proper bike that I can do some spinning on.
That's fantastic.
So that's how I do it.
Yeah. Well, you're looking in great shape. And what would be the last, perhaps a couple of tips that you'd give to listeners who are listening to the series? Things that you've found, pragmatic advice you've had that you could pass on, because these are people at all levels, from people who are just left university, aspiring to get on to senior roles. Some are in the military. Most are in business. What advice would you pass on?
So I think the way that I'd look at it is leadership throughout the 36 years that I was hopefully trying to practice in the army career, and then since. For me, it's got different as one moves through, but there is one consistent theme, which is you have to do your job well. So, for example, if you're a young troop commander and it's your job to navigate across Dartmoor, doesn't matter how good a bloke you are, whether you buy 30 beers or health fitness drinks nowadays in wherever it is you go afterwards. If you make them walk an extra 10 miles because you can't do your job or you can't navigate, then you're not going to do well as a leader.
Yeah,
so understand your current job. Then there's the next stage is the inspiration part of it and those sorts of issues. So at the level that I'm at now, I look at 5 things when I'm looking at an organisation, and they're not mine, they're a chap called Galbraith, and he said make sure that there's a proper structure, make sure that you've got the right processes in place, make sure you've got the right people in place, make sure you've got the right strategy in place, and make sure you've got the right rewards for those people. So essentially you need to reward people to use the processes that hits the structure that then delivers a strategy. And that's the job at our level, making that happen.
Brilliant. Alistair, as always, great words of wisdom. Thank you very much.
See you.
Fantastic having you on the series. Cheers.